I got up this morning at about 5 a.m. again. I'm a 5 a.m. waker. And I come out, and instead of doing the, right thing and walking past this door, I stub my toe on the door. And instead of, freaking out about it, I bow and go, Sumimasen! And at that moment, I realized we have been in Japan more than 3 days, and I am apologizing to doors for hitting them. And my toe hurts like fucking hell. And so I'm like, okay, you can't wake everybody up. You can't wake everybody up. Jameson had just used the bathroom. He went back to bed. So I walked in and I got here and I started reading and figuring out kind of what we were doing for the day. We decided that morning when Kayla and Jesse got up and Jameson got up that we were all going separate ways for the day, kind of having a date day. So we headed out first. We let Kayla have the key, and we headed out, and we decided that we were going to go to the National Museum of Tokyo because I really wanted to go to a museum. So we take the Joban line, which is everybody's favorite train station now, or train line. So we take the Joban line to Ueno, and we get out at Ueno, and it has two exits that say west exit and park exit. And we're supposed to go to the park exit. And that should have been a first clue that this might be a bigger thing than we originally thought. Mm-hmm. So we walk in, and we walk out the park exit, and there's a big map in front of us, and the cutest little old guy that has volunteer in Japanese on his... says volunteer in Japanese on his little... it's blue and checkered. And then he was wearing a cute little hat, and he has things, and he gives us a map in English and goes, "You are here. Here's the museum." And I was like, oh, he knows. So I take this map, and I actually have it over there, but I take this map, and I'm like, okay, so it's here. Oh, look, the park is about this big, and there's all this stuff in it. That's really cool. We should go see some of these things. And in my head, I was thinking, oh, it must be about as big as Sugar House Park. You know, a mile and a half, 2 miles. Very sweet. I'm thinking, it's probably about as big as Sugar House Park. Mistake number 2. So we get to the museum right as it opens, and there is a queue that is easily 1,000 people long.
Oh, yeah. God.
There were two.
There was
one
queues.
For the museum and one for the ticket booth to get into the line for the museum.
It was easily 1,000 people long. So first we passed a queue for the art museum, which was only 26 people long. We should have gone there first because we didn't get to that museum. But so the big museum, we get in line for thing, and as soon as it opened, because we were there right at opening, as soon as it opened, the line moved really fast.
Yeah, it's 1,000 people, but then it's just
boom, 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 boom. You're all in.
You're walking.
But then, as we were walking towards the museum, there were other queues for special events. So we bought tickets for the special exhibits. So I think it came to $2,700 per person,
it was
about $27
a person.
That's not bad.
Per person.
Oh, it's way cheaper than a lot of museums in the States, for sure.
Mm-hmm. But without the special things, it was only $6.
It was, yeah.
So with the 2 special exhibits, it came to about $27 a person. And we walked into it, and everybody was really, really nice because they would always hand us the English brochure. And only one person asked us if we actually spoke English, which was pretty funny. It was the first girl at the ticket counter. She goes, "English?" And I went, "Yes." And she goes, "Good." And hands it to me. So we get into the first exhibit, and we really have no idea what we're going to see. We just know we're in a museum, and I love museums. So our very first exhibit is National Treasures of Japan. So these are things that are owned by the emperor's family and are being loaned to the museum. They are very, very old artifacts. Starting off with screens, folding...
There are these, folding screen partitions from, I think they're from, the first ones we saw were from, the 13th century.
13th century. and they were painted by, I have his name. So
I wish I had like taken notes because there were so many cool things in this museum.
So, Kano Eitoku was the man who painted the first one, and these folding partitions had lions, the traditional Chinese lions on them. And Eitoku painted the first one, and his grandson painted the second one. So the first one, the lions were very buff. They looked like they were on steroid lions. They were.
Sadly, we won't be able to overlay pictures on this because you couldn't take any pictures. In the whole museum.
You would ruin them. So they were on paper, on gold leaf, and paint.
Wow.
So like the whole entire screen was gold leaf. So first were very buff lions, and then there was very skinny lions, and then on the side of our first exhibit, there was a long, 11-meter long silk painting of morning to dusk of the wildlife at the pond of the Imperial Palace.
Oh, I bet that was beautiful.
And it was
amazing.
Amazing. That was easily my favorite art piece. So it had like the turtles coming out of the sea at dawn, and then as you walked, the day went on and different animals were doing things. There was a huge section with puppies, and I have a really soft spot for those. And one puppy's starting to fall asleep towards the end of the day, and then it's the birds falling asleep, and it was just beautiful. And it was so interesting to see Japanese art, because unlike all European art from the same time period, everything looks like it's moving. So everything's in motion. So like lots of European art is like
a portrait of someone sitting, or a landscape of like a static landscape.
But we noticed like even the grass in a lot of these looks like there was wind coming through it. Mm-hmm. It very motion centric. Everything was moving. Nothing was portraity. It was really interesting to see that type of art. Another one of the favorite paintings in this section was I loved because of American history, was a peacock, and it was a peacock guarding his mate, and it was beautiful and realistic, and it's on this silk screen, and it was done during the Revolutionary War.
Yeah. So we were having a revolution. They were doing art.
They were doing
the Renaissance.
They were doing the Renaissance.
Well, the Japanese art world had a Renaissance for like 600 years.
Oh my gosh! Like
it's crazy.
The other thing that was really fun to see is in that whole section of the art museum was Issei. They had an original work by Issei, who is one of the first female waka poetry. That's wasa.
Wasa?
Wasa poetry. First female wasa poets. They had one of her original works from the 9th century, and next to it they had a hanging wall scroll painting of one of her artworks from the 12th century by someone else.
Yeah, so it was like a calligraphy copy of, right?
Yeah, it was like fan art.
Yeah, it was like fan art of a poem, basically.
It was really interesting. And they had a whole other wall of fan art of Issei poems, which was pretty fascinating. The other thing that was
really cool was there was like a draft of a calligraphy work that was on a single scroll that was rolled out, and the scroll was like 18 feet long. And it was just a draft like laying out
how
it was going to be cool for the actual work.
So the actual work is in the Emperor's home, apparently. So like it's on the screen doors or something similar to that. From what I gathered from the thing, it was on the Emperor's home. But this was the rough draft, which was really neat too. So after we did that, we walked through that. There was lots of cool art. Like, too bad it ends in June. I'd love to go back to that same exhibit and see it again. We then went on to another exhibit, a specialized exhibit. Oh, no, we didn't. We walked through part of the museum first, right? Yes.
We went through that because there was way more to the National Treasures of Japan exhibit.
No, because that wasn't part of, that was the regular museum down
Oh, okay. Right, because that was downstairs.
So after we got through the specialized exhibit, we got into the main museum, and in my head, we took a picture, and Jesse will show it to you, of what the museum looks out like from the front. And that's how big I thought it was. I was very, 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 very wrong. That's 4 times. I was really, really
Oh,
wrong.
it's a massive building.
The building is massive. it's easily like 6 times the size of a regular high school. It's huge. So we go in and to this downstairs thing, and there's old statues of Buddhas, and then there's a whole entire section on swords,
Which I loved. I thought it was super cool.
Jameson was really excited about. We saw an actual Masamune Sword, which was
from
the 13th century.
from the 13th century, and it had the chrysanthemum stamped on it. It was gorgeous.
It was really pretty.
I was amazed. It was really only about 2 feet long. They're not huge swords.
I think my favorite sword was a repurposed naginata, and the blade was this long, and I went, those were way scarier than I imagined them. Like, way scarier.
Yeah, so it was a naginata that had broken, and they repurposed the blade.
Cliff notes. A naginata is essentially a spear with a large blade at the end. So when they're saying the blade was that long, it's already at the end of a big pole.
Yeah. It's basically like a pig sticker.
They're pole arms.
They're
large weapons.
They're large. But it was impressive because I had always imagined a naginata more like scythe-like, like a little sickle on top of it. Like in my head, that was more what they were. But seeing the actual end of it and seeing how long it was, it really put into perspective how scary those weapons would be. Like even video games, like playing characters that I play with naginatas, because that's my favorite playstyle, Soul Calibur.
Persona 3.
Persona 3. I love naginata. Those aren't long enough. Like they like cut down how big the naginata end is, which is really interesting. We saw an actual piece of samurai armor, and oh my gosh, it's artwork.
Oh yeah,
it's beautiful.
Where the closest backing is silk, and then it's metal. The metal is sandwiched, and then it's all this beautiful like fabric work on the outside,
like just individual pieces of fabric. So we had a lot of fun walking through
the saddle.
Oh,
there was
a saddle that was like gold. And what we came to the decision of when looking at the saddle is they were very small people, and there were also very small horses.
Yeah.
Because the saddle was
probably only about that big. The saddle was that big, and then it was 2 stirrups.
Wow.
With the saddle. So it was not a huge horse or a huge person.
From when we thought about it, horses must have not been very big from the time period that saddle came from.
When we compare it to what we're familiar with, like American horses, which are
huge.
Or like even European, like going to a European museum and seeing the war stuff from that time period compared to the war stuff from Japan at the same time period.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything's a lot smaller in Japan in that same period, which was really cool. After we got through the regular museum, we then got to our second specialized exhibit, which we breezed through. We did not spend a lot of time there.
Partly because it was freaking crowded.
Oh, it was insane. So we had seen the queue earlier. And apparently when there's a specialized exhibit, everybody queues up for it. So we queue up for it, and we go in, and we go up the escalator, and there's 100 people in this little room.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't really see anything except we're tall, so we could see everything.
Yeah, we
couldn't
see
have.
Over people.
We can just see over people. So we didn't read anything because we couldn't see the text.
Yeah.
But we got to see the art. And so finally we get through this. It's about temples. Specifically Buddhist temples. We would get through this Buddhist temple room, all these rooms, there's 5 of them. And in the last one, there's all these statues of different Buddhas. And we're both like, my father is Buddhist, his mother's a hippie.
Whatever she is.
We know all about...
To this day, I don't know what my mom...
We know all about the Buddha. And, Avalokiteshvara and Canon, and, we know all of this stuff from our family. And so we get into the room of all the statues of the Buddhas, and the very first Buddha we see, it has a very angry face, has like 4 swords, and he's standing on a pile of dead bodies.
It's like kind of a god of conquest for a...
And we both kind of look at him and we're like, okay.
Huh.
And then we look at the next one, and it's a kind of angry guy with another sword,
And
six
he has
arms.
like a trident and 6 arms, and,
And
he's
he's
standing
stabbing-
on a pile of his vanquished enemies.
He's standing on a pile of his vanquished enemies. There's like 5 more of these things, but eventually they're no longer standing on vanquished enemies and they're standing on giant flowers, which doesn't make them any less terrifying. So in the back of all of these, there are 4 gold Buddha statues who look very serene and peaceful.
And so the 4 gold Buddhas, there's the pagoda on the park grounds that was moved originally, but those 4 statues used to be at that pagoda.
Mm-hmm. So each statue was supposed to be a center of knowledge for when you walked through.
And they were north, south, east, west.
Mm-hmm. So it was really funny to walk through, and I look at James and I'm like, isn't Buddhism like peaceful?
Yeah,
Apparently
it's
not
about
in
like
Japan.
peace and detachment and enlightenment, but no, conquest and war.
You gotta get some trauma to want to lead to
One of them
enlightenment.
specifically, when I read, the only one that I could read the plaque out was like, this is of lust and desire. And I went, oh, and what desire pushes you towards passion? And I went, he's really scary. Really scary. So after we left that section,
Fear
I was
leads
like,
to anger, anger leads to suffering.
Suffering leads to standing on piles of your vanquished enemies.
Right. So after we got through the museum, we took a seat and just tried to we got out through a garden and we wandered the garden.
And we saw these old tea houses.
These houses have been donated to the museum by the emperor's family from different time periods. So basically they pick them up and they move it.
Yeah, they've been
down.
moved from the Imperial Palace, so.
Which is really interesting. We couldn't go in them because they don't allow you to go in them, but one of them was open and it was really
Is it
pretty.
specifically foreigners that can't go in, or nobody can go in?
No, everybody.
No,
You can
like,
rent them.
Oh.
You can rent them
I
out
think
for
there's
special
like
occasions.
1 or 2 you can rent to do tea ceremonies in, but the rest are closed off just because traffic would damage them.
Mm-hmm. So we then walked through this beautiful garden area and got out of that. And then I was like, oh, let's go explore the park. Again, remember thinking that it might be the size of Sugar House Park.
So
2 miles.
4 hours later.
4 hours later. No, 5. We spent
We spent
5 or
like-
6
yeah,
hours.
5 hours in the park.
5 hours.
5 hours later.
No, so we begin to walk. I'm like, let's go see this shrine. So we go see this little shrine, and it's kind of cute and touristy, and it has all of everything in English. And then it has an offshoot, and I'm like, let's go that way. So we just begin hopping on random offshoots of the park, and we saw some really cool shrines.
Yeah.
And
There were like a good few different.
5. We saw 5 different little shrines. We saw a sacred tree that was 600 years old. Jameson hit his head on a Torah.
Oh, yeah, because the Torah was like less than 6 feet tall, and I winged my head walking out of the shrine.
Which the little old Japanese ladies behind us called him something, and I laughed because I heard gaijin and a smacking noise after he had done it. So she clapped her hands to show her friends, and he had winged his head on the Torah. And I was like, these little old Japanese ladies are going to go home and be like, the big white man totally winged his head on the Inari Torah. So this little shrine we found, this coolest shrine we found, was like hidden in a back alleyway, and it was all these little orange, 6 feet tall Torah, and it's a little Inari shrine, and it's very. You have to tell them what Inari are. Inari are fox gods.
Of
So-
the harvest.
These ones are education.
Oh, okay.
So, at least that was the gist I got from one of the people. So, you go to the Inari and ask for benefits in your education. So, the little Inari are sitting by the shrine, and it's like a miniature version of a temple. And it was really off of where we thought we were. So there was the big shrine and a big shrine, and it was kind of tucked in an alleyway, like almost like the hole in the wall place. It just was next to a little shop, so I thought, oh, it's a cute little garden, and it was not. We also saw a peony garden that has peonies from all over the world, and it's separated out into sections where it's like these are Japanese peonies, these are Chinese peonies, these are international peonies. And each little peony has its own umbrella. Which is really cute.
They're shade flowers.
They're shade flowers. And one of the gardeners came in and dug a new hole for a peony to get a new umbrella. It was pretty funny. I was like, everybody has their own little paper umbrella. Flowers, man, they're neat. So after doing the flowers and seeing the Inari Shrine, I'm like, okay, let's walk back to the train station. And I'm like, let's go that way because we haven't gone that way. So when we start going, Jameson, tell them what happened when we went that way.
Is that before you got something to eat?
Oh no.
Oh no, we got food first.
Yeah, we got food first.
We got food first, and that's when I got yelled at by the local. So we go. There was this big dance festival going on.
After we exited the museum, we ended up exiting near the fountains, and on the other side of the fountains there was a children's dance festival, and
there were all these booths with different types of food.
Booths
so
with
we're
different types
we're
of food.
hungry, let's go.
And we're like, oh, let's eat. So
Katie got this. Was seriously just like, this guy was doing roasted fish on a stick, which were actually, I had a bite of it. They were surprisingly good. It was very fishy, but they were surprisingly good.
Fish on a stick is fishy?
Shut up, you know. And I got yaki or takoyaki, and they had yakitori. I wanted to get yakitori too, but I already had a lot of food. So I got takoyaki, and then Katie also got
dango. I got walnut miso dango,
which was also really good. But they had all these tables set up, and I go to like sit down at this table, and I didn't realize that in Japan it's super rude to sit across from someone because if you don't like know them, because in America we do it all the time. So I go to sit down, and this Japanese guy just starts like yelling at me and cursing me out, and I'm like. And everyone like,
he didn't curse you out. He just told you that you were ignorant, and then he also said that you needed to go away because it was his seat. And he said it very firmly and very loudly, and several people around him were very unhappy with him. They all kind of glared at him.
Everyone glared at me, and I just like eased away.
Oh.
So yeah, that was my bad. I had left to go throw away trash. So after...
Would you have even known, though? I didn't know that was a thing.
So in retrospect, we probably should have guessed something like that was a thing. Mostly because it's all about personal space. And we're oddly friendly. Like,
yeah,
Americans are just
Americans, if there are just big tables, will just like sit down.
Mm-hmm. So I think that the standing table that he told him, no, you can't stand here, I'm eating here, I think that was very culturally... It would have been better if he had been nicer about it.
Yeah.
But I do think it was culturally appropriate that Jameson was told no. So then tell him what happened now that we've segued. Tell them what happened when we decided to go away from the Inari Shrine, and I thought we were getting back to the train to go somewhere else.
Oh, so we left the Inari Shrine, and we thought, we're just going to walk around the park. So we go, and we kind of walk down towards this pond, because the park has this big pond, and there's another shrine in the middle of the pond, which was also really cool. But we go and we're like, so we'll walk down to the street on the other end of the park and we'll just walk around because we've seen a lot of the park. We'll see some of the city and then we'll go back to the train station. So we go and we start, we go down through the middle and we see the shrine, and the shrine was really cool. And we kind of get to the other side and we start walking around. And then 30 minutes later, we're still walking around the pond. And there was a huge amphitheater that can seat like 2,000 people, and there's some kind of J-pop concert going on in the amphitheater. So
what he's not telling you is we start walking around the pond, and again 30 minutes later we get to another pond where they're doing rowboats on the other side of the pond, like swan boats, the pedal boats.
So you could rent swan
So
boats.
you could rent swan boats, and then we keep walking, and it's about another 30 minutes before we get to this amphitheater. It takes us about an hour to get around.
I didn't realize we'd been walking for that. I didn't realize that was like an hour.
About one side of the pond, and then finally we can see the end, and I'm like, okay, let's go this way because this will take us back to the train station because it's about 3:30.
We did see a lot of turtles in the pond. The turtles
And koi.
And koi.
But it's about 3:30. We should head back towards Matsudo because I said let's go back and meet by about 5. And I'm like, we have no idea how long this is going to take. So we start walking back, and we walk along the side of Ueno Park, and it takes us. We had to stop for snacks twice.
Yeah. Like we stopped once to get coffee, and we stopped again.
For water.
Yeah.
So we had to stop twice, and then we kept going, and it was like a wall on one side, and Ueno Park's above the wall, and then it's all kind of dingy shops, like really sketch for Japan on the other. So you're walking along Ueno Park, and it's beautiful up top, and then there's like dingy shop, Italian restaurant, dingy shop.
We saw some Italian restaurants.
So it was really interesting to walk that, and then you have to go upstairs and downstairs and upstairs and downstairs and upstairs and downstairs, and finally we get back to Ueno Station, to the park exit, and we at this point are just done.
Well, we got back to one station, and it wasn't the
Oh, the
JR
right
station.
station.
So we went into the wrong train station. It was like, we thought it was next to the JR station. To get to the JR station, you had to go up a bunch of stairs and across the street and through this other thing, and really it was like a quarter
Jesus.
mile away.
But then we get to the JR station, and the Joban line is number 10. But where we got to in the station is at the end of the Joban line, so we're looking for the way to get on to number 10, but we're at the end of the line, so it's blocked here, and you can't get anywhere. We didn't realize it was back the other way, so we did miss one train and then got on the next train. But it then took about 20 minutes for our train to start, because it was the last stop, so then we had to wait for our train to get all the people
And actually leave.
And that was our day.
The nice thing was, since we had gotten on the train 20 minutes early, there were still seats, so we got to sit on the way back, as opposed to standing for another hour.
That is nice.
It's Japan.
Why no seats? Why no trash? Why no bathroom?
Get ready to be on your feet all day.
Bathroom.
No bathrooms.
So I, in the park, had to use a squat toilet for the first time.
A squatty potty.
And it was bright pink squat toilet. And I realized that I am bigger than most women in Japan. So getting into squat toilet stall in Ueno Park and then squatting as a big woman in Japan is not the easiest thing in the world. There's not a lot of room. I'm like 5'8" and some extra. So getting your legs to go the right way to squat on said toilet is no.
Cut to our journey.
No.
Kayla also Kayla
no.
also was using a squatty potty at the very same time that Katie was, apparently.
Yeah.
The very first squatty potty.
Yay.
She did all right. I didn't tell her that right next to that stall was a Western one.
Correct. Oh, you had options?
She didn't know that at the time.